Namaste and greetings. I, Zubia Moin, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all at IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. Today, we are gathered for a special talk on the topic Tokens, Symbols, or Incipient Feminists, the first generation of women sociologists in India by Professor Kamala Ganesh. This deliberation is a part of the State of Gender Equality #Gender Gap series organized by the IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. As the chair for the session, we have Professor Vibhuti Patel, visiting distinguished professor at IMPRI and GISC, former professor, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. We welcome you, ma'am. With permission of chair, I would like to introduce the gathering.
Yeah, please, Zubia, please introduce the panelists.
Thank you, ma'am. We are elated to welcome the speaker for today's session, Professor Kamala Ganesh, former professor and head, Department of Sociology, University of Mumbai. We welcome you, ma'am. We are delighted to welcome the guest of honor for today's talk, Professor Ratna Naidu, former professor and head, Department of Sociology, and former Dean of School of Social Sciences, University of Hyderabad. We welcome you, ma'am. We'd also like to welcome the editors of the book, Reimagining Sociology in India, Feminist Perspectives, Dr. Gita Chadha, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, University of Mumbai, and Dr. Joseph M.T., Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, University of Mumbai. We welcome you. We are also joined by esteemed discussant, Professor Arvinder Ansari, Director, Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, and Professor, Department of Sociology, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. We welcome you, ma'am. Now, I invite our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel, to initiate the deliberation with her opening remarks and to proceed further. We look forward to learning from the esteemed gathering. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends. Today, first of all, I would like to welcome Dr. Kamala Ganesh, feminist sociologist, who is going to deliver a talk on early women in Indian sociology, feminist perspectives. Greetings to today's guest of honor, Professor Ratna Naidu, and editors of books Reimagining Sociology in India, Feminist Perspective, Dr. Gita Chadha and Dr. Joseph M.T., who are also discussants today, along with Professor Arvinder Ansari and esteemed participants. I see so many sociologists of our country are there in today's deliberation. So welcome to this talk on early women in Indian sociology and feminist perspectives by Professor Kamala Ganesh, who is a renowned intellectual whose academic contributions have been in domain of feminist sociology with special focus on impact of feminism on family and kinship studies. She has made path-breaking contribution regarding conceptual, methodological, and theoretical debates at the intersection of anthropology, ethnography, and feminism. Through her qualitative research, she has highlighted patriarchal control over women's sexuality, shown interconnections of macrosocial processes and how it impacts the intimate domain. She has brought the method of reflexivity into her writings at a time when sociologists of both schools of thoughts, liberal as well as leftist, were not ready to accept contribution of women's studies and alleged that women's studies had not produced any meta-theory such as structural functional perspective or modernization thesis or caste analysis by Professor M. Srinivasan, an introduction of concept of Sanskritization, so on and so forth. Now, her today's lecture, based on the first chapter of the book, Reimagining Sociology in India, Feminist Perspective, is like, and she focuses on the early women sociologists in India. Here she examines contributions of 8 women sociologists with insights into their teaching and research writing. Feminist sociologists such as Professor Neera Desai or Professor Leela Dubey, who directed their efforts at reshaping discipline of sociology from the position of the marginal and the oppressed. Out of 8, one I had several opportunities to personally interact with four of the sociologists, because people consider me less of an economist but more of a sociologist because of my close association, intellectual association, academic association, and association in the feminist movement with Dr. Neera Desai, who was responsible to motivate me to make dedicated efforts in women's studies. So I switched over from mathematical economics and econometrics to the whole qualitative studies that women's studies always give me great importance, and also the experiential articulation. Dr. Leela Dubey's polemical contribution on declining sex ratio was very helpful to build campaign against sex selection, which we were spearheading under the umbrella of Forum Against Sex Determination and Sex Preselection. Dr. Iravati Karve's Yugant was our favorite reading and favorite Christmas gift also, because Sahitya Academy had published it thousands of copies and they were easily available. And as a registrar of SNDT Women's University, she was popular as not only as an erudite scholar, but extremely humane and egalitarian with the people around her. Dr. Parvatamma was a conscience keeper who always challenged us to get out of our upper class and upper caste worldview and be inclusive of Dalit question. After her retirement, Dr. Manorama Savu joined Women's Center when I was working full-time for this organized Women's Center, which provided institutional support to women survivors of violence. And this edited volume, Reimagining Sociology in India, Feminist Perspective, was published in honor of Professor Kamala Ganesh. And now I request the editors to provide genesis and the eagle's eye view of the book. Over to Dr. Gita Chadha and Dr. Joseph M.T.
Thank you. Thank you. Firstly, let me thank IMPRI for organizing these two sessions around the book. The first, which we had on the 13th, in memory of Sharmila Rege, to whom this book is dedicated also. Let me also thank Professor Vibhuti Patel, who has taken a personal interest and supported both the book and I remember that she was the chair for the session in the conference on early women in sociology. And the book, the genesis of the book, as I explained last time also, Joseph joined our department of Bombay University in 2012 and I joined in 2013. And the job of conducting the annual seminar fell on me, and I was very...
My hearing is well.
Very determined to look at the relationship between feminism and sociology, which were two of my concerns and passions. And so the seminar in 2014 also coincided with the retirement year of Professor Ganesh in the department, who is my thesis advisor, my mentor, my friend. So we decided that when we decided to produce the volume, Joseph and I decided to do a double dedication in the volume to both Sharmila and to Kamala. And we find that this double dedication is also runs at a deeper level, where we are trying to grapple with the different genealogies of or paths that feminist sociology has taken in our country. To put it very simply, Sharmila worked in a women's studies department and did a lot of her feminist sociology from there. And Kamala worked in a sociology and anthropology department at Bombay University and brought in feminist sociology over there. So as we all know, that the roots of bringing women's issues and feminism in the academia have been threefold. One is to the add-on approach, as I said last time. The other is to establish separate departments of women's studies centers. And the third is to work from within the disciplines. And the seminar and the book is located very much within the third attempt, which is to bend our discipline of sociology as it gets influenced by feminism, and of course vice versa. So in that context, when we were discussing some of the thematics that we wanted to bring forth in the seminar, in the book, it was evident that any effort in feminism, any discipline, is to retrieve voices of women who have been marginalized, and or let's say who have played a role in the making of the discipline but have not perhaps been as visibilized. In that context, we decided that a part of this feminist project of feminist sociology has to be to retrieve early women in sociology, and that's where Professor Ganesh's work and her extensive research and very rigorous probing helped us to develop a framework also as to how to look at the early women in sociology, who might or might not necessarily, because the unavailability of the word, the problematic of ghettoization, and various other reasons, prefer not to have the prefix feminist. So, in that sense, how do we, as contemporary current-day feminists, read their work from a feminist perspective using both gender and patriarchy as lenses? And our, of course, major dilemma was, are we imputing things where there aren't? Are we creating fiction in this effort to reimagine the works of the early women in sociology? And I'm sure the lecture today will enlighten us a lot. I'll just flag off a couple of things that we've spoken about even in our introduction, which is one is to say that the numbers have always, representation of women in sociology has always been a little bit of an issue. While you see a lot of women, young women in sociology as students, you see a lot of women in undergraduate level, what happens as we go higher up within the institutions of higher education? Why do the women start getting missed? So we've sort of analyzed some of that from going beyond the question of numbers to actually looking at what are the experiences of women in sociology and what is it that is a roadblock to the development of feminist sociology. And one of the things that we encounter is this two things that I want to say is that one is this association of any feminist work as being less theoretical, less rigorous, less intellectual, and being much more in terms of an activism, and things like that, which is something that we've attempted to address and change, arguing. And probably this is the reason why a lot of women who want to work within the rigor of the discipline and all of that tend to shy away from accepting feminism as a prefix, but also as a consciousness. And the other thing that we notice is that there is constantly theoretically dilemma as to how do we place gender. Is gender a more overarching category? Is caste a more overarching category? Class more overarching? Or of course, as good old structure functionalism will say, the system is. Yeah. So these how to sort of make gender a very crucial theoretical, conceptual, methodological principle within the discipline, and not restricted to just the study of women and the issues of women. Yeah. So some of this will come up again as I'm sure Kamala will speak, but I'll just end by saying that one of the things that we found, which was very valuable, and that is what Vibhuti also referred to, is a lot of the early women in sociology, what you see is that, and that is something I think is inspirational, we need to draw upon that, did a lot of work, what we've called in the introduction, outside of sociology. Yeah, whether it's their voluntary work, whether it's writing of Yogant, and none of this gets none of this gets taken into account when we are talking about the contributions of these women in sociology. So our contention would be that how do we look at all the contribution that they made outside of sociology and to see its significance within sociology. Yeah. And so I'll end by saying, last time also we had discussed this, that are we, when looking at early women, building legacies, or are we looking at drawing out voices which will make us move towards a feminist collective? Because as I said last time also, and it's there in the book, that the problem of the concept of legacy itself needs to be problematized. Yeah. So I'll end with that and I'll hand over to Joseph.
Yeah. Thanks, Professor Vibhuti Patel, and also the IMPRI team for this putting together this program. The book, as Gita has rightly just now said, is an attempt at mapping and marking in the intersections between sociology and feminism in India. And one of the crucial part of the book, which is the first part, is the section on pioneers. Today, Professor Kamala Ganesh's talk is specifically on the pioneer and the different ways in which we can actually visualize each of the pioneers. I should just give a kind of a brief summary of the different chapters in that section, so that we get a sense of what is the content of the book in that. I should just present my screen for a very short slide presentation. Yeah, is it visible?
We can see it full screen. Yes, perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the title, all of that, and now this is the part of the book. The first part, which is titled Reading and Writing Early Women Sociology. There is an introductory chapter by Professor Kamala Ganesh, Early Women Sociologists in India, followed by chapter by Professor Veena Punacha, Reclaiming Neera Desai's Sociological Legacy, then the Sociology of C. Parvatama by Professor Arvinder, and on Ratna Naidu, who is fortunately with us today, an intellectual biography by Professor Kushal Dev. Now, the second chapter, first chapter, Professor Kamala Ganesh will be talking at length very soon. The second chapter on Professor Neera Desai, it talks about the intersecting terrains of her work, which is tied up with her egalitarian politics and the manner in which the interdisciplinary frame of women's studies was defined by the politics of women's movement and aimed at establishing gender equality. Some way of mapping her work, I have just highlighted certain aspects of it. The following chapter, in which Professor Arvinder was mapping the work of C. Parvatama, where she calls Professor Parvatama's work itself as a sociological saga. And again, the emphasis in her work on equality, the development of vulnerable groups. And towards the conclusion of that chapter, Professor Indra talks about her structuralist tradition, preventing her from altogether rejecting the social order, but her own anguish makes her seek to change it. The kind of a dual focus in her work that she was able to identify. And then the next chapter on an intellectual biography of Professor Ratna Naidu, mapping her work, the critique of Parsonian action theory, a focus on ethnicity, secularism, and communalism, contribution to urban studies. And she made you feel, this is a quote from one of her students, she made you feel that sociology was the only important thing in one's life. Everything else was unimportant. And towards the end, Professor Kushal gives a quote from Professor Ratna Naidu, who told you that I'm not a feminist? Every woman sociologist is a feminist. It is just that I don't talk about it. So that sums up that chapter. Just an attempt at giving a sense of the different chapters in the book that we are dealing with most of this. And Professor Kamala Ganesh will be elaborating on all of these and much more in her talk. So just giving a taste of it. That's it from me. Thank you.
Please unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Gita Chadha and Dr. Joseph, for providing an overview. And I think ended with a very, very inspiring quotation from Professor Naidu that every woman sociology is a feminist. With that, I think I would like to request Professor Kamala Ganesh to make her presentation.
Please unmute, ma'am. Yes, please unmute.
Ma'am, you are muted.
Okay. Have I unmuted? Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Right. Chairperson, Professor Vibhuti Patel, guest of honor, Professor Ratna Naidu, editors, Gita Chadha and MT Joseph, discussant, Professor Arvinder Ansari, colleagues from Impact and Policy Research Institute and friends. I'm delighted to be here among so many colleagues and friends. I can see some of them, but I can't see the others, but the numbers are there. I know that Indira is here, Aparna Rayaprol is here, my friend Indira Munshi is here. So it's a great delight to talk about, celebrate, and discuss this very special book edited by my dear colleagues Gita and Joseph. When a new field gets established, there is an inevitable phase of harking back to foundational figures and pioneers. Since the category of gender has in general been invisibilized historically, the retrieval of four mothers in feminist scholarship has become a complex and difficult exercise. Even more so when feminism, movement, ideology, and practice interfaces with a conventional discipline like sociology. Please note, I'm not using the term foremother as a mirror image of forefather. Feminist sociology is now a recognized subfield, and it is the subject of the book being discussed here. I would like to congratulate the editors for its comprehensive scope and incisive analysis, and thank them for the dedication. My article in this book revisits the work of 8 first-generation women sociologists in India: Chandrakala Hate, Iravati Karve, Bela Dutt Gupta, Neera Desai, Leela Dubey, Hemlata Acharya, Manorama Savur, and C. Parvatamma. It goes without saying that these women sociologists may not necessarily be feminist foremothers, and I wonder what Ratna Naidu will say to that. But let's see. Sociology in India is about 2 centuries old, a direct descendant of the colonial enterprise of knowledge making. The first generation of Indians entered these fields after the mid-19th century. For example, L.K. Ananthakrishna Iyer, S.C. Roy, Brajendranath Seal. The first women entered sociology almost 50 years later. This was the era of professionalization of the discipline from the early 20th century till about the 1960s. In this group of 8, Chandrakala Hate and Iravati Karve, born in 1903 and 1905 respectively, were the first women in the discipline. The other 6 were born in the 1920s. I have clubbed these 2 successive cohorts into one group just for the purposes of this work. They are part of a pioneering generation of women professionals. Of course, there were outstanding women sociologists from the 1930s too, like Professor Ratna Naidu. But for the purposes of this essay, I have limited myself to those born before the 30s. Before I proceed further, a little bit about where my article fits into this book. A fortnight ago, IMPRI held a lively and thoughtful discussion on the same book as a tribute to the memory of Sharmila Rege, who was both a sociologist with a critical approach and a committed feminist. When faced with a choice between a professorship in the Sociology Department of the University of Pune and helming its Women's Studies Center, albeit in a lower formal position, she chose to be with Women's Studies, unambiguously taking sides in the ongoing conversation over the last few decades between sociology and feminism. 2 generations earlier, Neera Desai too had done this, but her choice was made at a different time and a different context. On the other hand, Gita Chadha and M.T. Joseph's book takes a position embracing both sociology and feminism. It covers considerable ground on the potentials and actualities of the mutual interaction between the two, successfully achieving a critical balance. This, in my view, is a core strength of the book. It indicates a commitment to recognize and appreciate the multiple legacies that go into the making of any field of knowledge. And in effect, it questions the uncritical use of the term legacy when used in the singular. The original title of the seminar in 2014, which led to this volume, was Genders, Feminisms, and Sociologies Towards a State of Alteredness. I remember me being mildly puzzled with the triple plurals in the title. I felt that singular and plural usages were both acceptable for all the 3 terms, depending on the context. Using a singular, to me, did not preclude plurality. But after reading the wide-ranging introduction by Gita and Joseph, I changed my mind. It was not a question of just semantics. At this juncture, when master narratives are still the fallback option, tying ideas, concepts, and issues together with explicit reference to plurality was necessary. In a formal sense, sociology, by which I mean social anthropology as well, following the convention in India, it is much older than feminist studies. Over more than 2 centuries, it has seen some radical interventions. However, mainstream structure functionalist sociology, predicated on the idea of social stability, prevailed for a good part of the 20th century, creating the image of a statist quoist discipline. But right from the beginning, there were countercurrents that engaged with social conflict and transformation, as well as cultural meaning and individual intention. From the late 1960s and 70s onwards, these currents, due to a variety of factors, got strengthened, leading to a recognition of sociology in the plural. Feminist scholars started interrogating conventional social science disciplines for their gender blindness from the late 1980s onwards. They drew not only from their experiential knowledge, but engaged with disciplinary assumptions, its silences, as well as its potentials and possibilities. The subterranean currents and the sotto voces in sociology, and even more so in social anthropology, provided academic ballast for the feminist activism and scholarship of that time, which gradually realized its own plurally constituted selves. This was an important transition from what is sometimes called as second wave feminism. In this, the contribution of Black, colored, Dalit, minority, and queer feminists is noteworthy. Gita and Joseph's book engages with feminist sociology theoretically and methodologically and pedagogically, using the tools of reflexivity, location, and intersectionality. Both in its substance and style, it nudges us to think over the implications of recognizing and foregrounding plurality in gender, feminism, and sociology. The editors also flag the overused term legacy for further exploration and rethinking. Searching for legacy was my ostensible objective in writing on women sociologists born prior to the 1930s. This group is significant because they entered sociology in a pre-feminist era, saturated with the concerns of social reform, nationalism, and nation building. The status of women in India was an important element too, but through this particular prism. In addition, except Karve, who died in 1967, this group lived through the transformative period of the 1970s to 90s, when the autonomous women's movement flourished and led to the emergence of women's studies, as well as to conscious efforts of gendering the social sciences and humanities. Our group of 8 could not have been untouched by the vociferous debates around feminism. The report of the Committee on the Status of Women in India towards Equality in 1974, the UN Declaration of 1975 as the International Women's Year and 1975-85 as the Women's Decade, as also the landmark campaigns by the women's movement in India in that period, cumulatively had substantial impact on policy, activism, and scholarship. Sociology had started interfacing with feminism. Our group therefore had some conceptual and theoretical scaffolding on a global scale available to them. They practiced their sociologies within this overall atmosphere, except for Karve and Hate. So even if some were silent on the subject, they could not have been unaware of the issues. Perhaps it was a choice made amidst circumstances that inhibited open articulation. Or could it be the overwhelming desire to be seen as thorough professionals? Through their individual trajectories, we can infer something about the societal and sociological ethos of that time, how professional contributions of and on women were perceived, and the pressures of situating oneself in the tradition-modernity dichotomy dominating sociology, in which the issue of women's rights was enmeshed. I have not focused on whether or not this group espoused the formal label of feminism, nor have I done critical reviews of their work. Some of these are available in the public domain. Rather, I have examined the existential situation of their being women sociologists in a certain time and space, and its relationship to their fields and approaches. I have asked questions like, have they written autobiographically on their socialization? Had they reflected on their experience as women professionals? After their 1970s, with the advent of a new phase in the women's movement, what was their relationship with activism and policy making? Did they bring into their research and pedagogy features like blending the personal and professional, reflexivity, problematizing social location, and focus on marginality? All of this was inspired by, or in any case, compatible with feminism. As a small group in that early period, how did they relate to each other? How did the sociological community regard them? More pertinently to the concerns of Gita and Joseph's book, did they leave a collective archive? Can we call it a legacy? A few caveats. My selection of women sociologists is not exhaustive, though these are the prominent ones on whom information, even if sometimes patchy, is available. There are at least 3 or 4 others whom I could name, which I'm not doing here. I had personally interacted closely with a few of the 8 and had direct access to their archive. My talk today, due to time constraints, only sketches an outline of their rich biographies. A more comprehensive exercise is surely warranted to keep open other possible readings. Coming to our group of 8, the cumulative oeuvre of these early women sociologists conveys their ranging from extensive academic engagement fused with social action and activism like Harte and Desai, to exclusively academic work like Dubé, to brief but brilliant interventions in both scholarly and popular modes like Karve, to academic silence but post-retirement involvement in policy and activism on the part of Gupta and Savoor, to approaches like those of Acharya and Parvatamma, who were neither academically nor otherwise engaged with the subject, but showed concern and empathy for women's problems in real life situations. Chandrakala Harte and Iravati Karve were more than 15 years older than the next cohort. Although the sociologies of the two are not similar to each other, their dynamics vis-a-vis the subject of women is distinct from the other 6, as they did not have the reference points of the post-1970s feminism. This gave them an element of freedom from feminist canons, although Harte's work, deeply influenced by Mahadev Govind Ranade, reflected the reformist and nation-building canons of her own time. Karve, on the other hand, was a creative, original thinker, not inhibited by canonical pressure of reform and nationalism, and only subscribed to what she thought was scientific objectivity. Iravati Karve focused her academic energies and passion on anthropology, including physical and cultural anthropology, but interfaced this with studies in Indology, folklore, material culture, socio-economic surveys, and literary analysis. She also wrote in popular media on various aspects of Marathi life and culture. Her study of kinship systems in India is a widely cited tome. She has a short, incisive section in this on the meanings and implications of specific kinship systems, Northern and Southern Indian, on the lives of women. Her analysis of kinship, not as abstract and neutral systems, but as having material consequences for the people who live in them, was taken up seriously by feminist anthropologists only much later. Karve's sensitivity to women's worlds is also evident in her many non-academic writings and in her ways of conducting her own life. Her book, Yuganta, is a riveting analysis of some characters of the Mahabharata, both men and women, challenging the traditional male gaze. Her contemporary, Chandrakala Hate, was completely immersed in the subject of women, first as a scholar and then as a social worker. Her first book, Hindu Women and Her Future, was a revised version of her PhD thesis, submitted in 1948 under Ghurye's guidance. Based on surveys of middle-class women, it strongly advocates women's education and workforce participation. Her second book came much later in 1969, Changing Status of Woman in Post-Independent India, again a survey-based evaluation, a kind of a mini towards equality, lauding the positive changes after independence, but also underlining many continuing serious problems. While later feminists critiqued this pre-1970 approach with its preoccupation with educated urban middle-class women, in her second book, Hate did devote attention to women's issues in the lower middle and lower social strata and spoke about the need for organizing women in the manual labor sector. She was well aware of the position that while nature makes us male or female, society makes us men or women. However, the underlying assumption was that of woman as a unitary category, as is evident from the title of her book. After retirement from SNDT Women's University, she left academic writing and founded Kutumba Sakhi, which trained and supported working class women in making and selling simple Maharashtrian snacks. That enterprise is still flourishing today with a buzzing presence online and offline. Like Hate, Neera Desai and Leela Dubey also made women and gender their major academic focus, but their approaches were different from Hate's. Both Desai and Dubey were members of the Towards Equality Committee on the Status of Women in India and became close friends. Veena Mazumdar has recounted beautifully how working on the report was a transformative process for all members, and a collective conscience emerged from that. Desai, who simultaneously engaged with academics and activism, became Dubey's link to the autonomous women's movement. Dubey's roots in ethnography were strong, and they gave form and flesh to her feminist concerns. Desai imbibed this from her. Both had done women-focused research much before feminist sociology emerged. Desai's 1951 MA by thesis was on the impact of British rule on the status of women in India, and Dubey's 1953 PhD thesis was on the Gond women of Chhattisgarh. Desai's own girlhood in a nationalist family, her exposure to radical politics through her spouse, A.R. Desai, and close association with SNDT with its focus on women's education, led to her evolution into an earnest feminist scholar, but also a supporter of feminist activism. She was the founder director of the Research Center for Women's Studies, the first one of its kind in the country. Concurrently, she held the position of HOD Sociology at SNDT. She practiced a sociology compatible with her gender concerns, focusing on relevance to real life rather than abstract theorizing. There is fine writing on Neera Desai by Vibhuti Patel and Veena Punacha, which you all must read. Leela Dubey's childhood observations on the minutiae of domestic life within patrilineal households gave her a good grip on the ethnographic fieldwork that she later conducted as an anthropologist, initially as an assistant to her famous anthropologist spouse, S.C. Dubey. Her research trajectory delved into the cultural specificities of women from various castes, tribes, and religions, the interpretation of rules depending on context, and the leeway offered to or taken by women of different cultures to find some security between various kinship systems led her to militate against a monolithic definition of patriarchy. She explored the agency of women even during the early days when notions of unrelenting patriarchy and unrelieved victimhood of women held sway. This and her reflexive style of writing were her major contributions to women's studies. Her contribution to anthropology, on the other hand, was to demonstrate that kinship was not a matter of esoteric and symbolic realms alone. Rather, it had a material base and conferred entitlements to resources crucial to the business of living. Therefore, different kinship systems had different implications for the life chances of the women and men who lived within them. In this, she was extending Iravati Karve's formulations. Early in her career, Dubé had evolved a style of fieldwork and writing closely resembling the feminist delineation of reflexivity. Her analyses drew as much from her own life as from researching the other. She acknowledged openly that for her, the subject of women was an emotional concern converted to an intellectual challenge. The person, anthropologist, and feminist were in a continuum. Hemlata Acharya and Parvatamma came from vastly different backgrounds of caste, class, and region. Both achieved educational and professional excellence through personal struggle. After a traditional arranged marriage after matriculation, Acharya pursued higher studies with the support of her spouse, N.M. Acharya, a well-known professor of English in Nashik. Parvatamma was from a poor Dalit family. She was raised by her widowed mother, a manual laborer, who determinedly educated her daughter against all odds. Eventually, she did her PhD in Manchester University as Max Gluckman's student. Both Acharya and Parvatamma had a deep commitment to sociology as professionals. Parvatamma's research spanned a range of topics on caste-class dynamics, village conflicts, interplay of caste and religion. She also researched and wrote extensively on Dalit issues. She made accurate and scathing documentations of the deprivations and injustices against Dalits and was critical of, say, state welfare policies and programs. Within an overarching structure-functional framework, she was markedly sensitive to rural power relations and hierarchy, caste oppression, and conflict. Her critique of Srinivas's Remembered Village as representing a Brahmanical viewpoint revealed her keen awareness of the politics of knowledge-making. Yet, she did not make a significant intervention on gender, either academically or out of it. There are some passing references in her work that indicate her keen awareness. Given that she knew Leela Dubé and Neera Desai well, it is a puzzle that she did not engage more deeply with gender. Reading about her strict, non-partisan sense of discipline and fair play in the university and her affectionate connect with students outside of class, in articles written by R. Indira and many of her colleagues and friends, we can surmise that Parvatamma was deeply anchored in her professional self, having achieved it through struggle and hard work. Despite her strong commitment to Dalit studies, she did not align herself explicitly with Dalit activism. So could it be that she found women's movement and women's studies incompatible with her moorings as a professional sociologist, or is another reading possible? I don't know. There are some points of convergence between Parvatamma and Acharya. Acharya worked on urbanization, kinship, weekly markets, collaborated with Iravati Karve, contributed to then current debates in Economic and Political Weekly, and was an admired teacher in Nashik. From recollections by my dear friend Sonal Shukla, it is possible to read her distancing herself professionally from women and gender studies as a collateral of her intense desire to be respected as a professional sociologist. In some quarters at that time, and those of you who were in Bombay University and not SNDT, in Bombay University around the 70s and 80s, like Indra, will remember that women's studies was treated with a little bit of disdain as lacking scholarly rigor. But in her professional life, Acharya was a big supporter of women's education and equality, as chronicled by her neighbor and friend S.D. Pandit. We can perhaps infer that she wanted to keep her personal convictions separate from her academic profile. Both Bela Dutt Gupta and Manorama Savoor in Kolkata and Mumbai respectively had in common a negligible academic engagement with gender, but enormous concern and empathy for it in their non-academic life. post-retirement, both got involved in women's issues in policy and the NGO sectors respectively. Both were politically left-wing, though not in party politics. In the early stages of the autonomous women's movement, Marxists were not inclined to take gender and caste too seriously. In Gupta's case, additionally, sociology was a passion and a mission, and this likely left her with little energy for examining gender issues. She started with political science and economics, but her PhD in Calcutta University was on the history and development of sociology in India. She became an ardent proponent of a separate identity for sociology in Calcutta, a proposal which was resisted by anthropologists and political scientists who were reluctant to cede territory to this new field. She was the founder of the sociology department at Calcutta University and editor of the journal Other Sociology. She started writing and speaking on women only from the 1990s, when she became the first chairperson of the West Bengal State Women's Commission, presiding over its activities as an informed activist rather than as an academician. Her student Bula Bhadra recounts how she was a hands-on campaigner, especially on issues of violence against women. Under her leadership, the commission produced a landmark report on the status of women in West Bengal and a study of widows in Vrindavan. Like Gupta, Manorama Savoor's post-retirement voluntary work at the Women's Center was a clear departure from the bulk of her earlier work. In Mumbai University's Department of Sociology, she came under the influence of A.R. Desai. Although she was not a full-time activist, she was an ardent supporter of left and radical movements and people's movements in general. Her research was in areas organically connected with her political beliefs: rural underdevelopment, role of international agencies in environmental degradation, history of the Indian trade union movement, the destruction of forests to feed the paper industry, colonial origins of sociology in Bombay, and so on. Despite such versatility, Savoor did not write on women, with a minor exception. Her student and colleague Indra Munshi, who I believe is here in the audience, evokes the atmosphere in the department during Professor A.R. Desai's time. For the students and colleagues who coalesced around him, class analysis was central. Gender had not yet been taken up in mainstream social scientists. The subtext was that somehow women's studies had become a bandwagon of questionable academic rigor. Perhaps Savoor chose to distance herself from women's studies in order not to be disloyal to class analysis. Either one embraced gender issues fervently or steered clear of it totally. This, of course, changed with time, and it is no mean credit to feminist scholars and activists to have achieved this, beginning with that very dismal impression in the beginning. Savoor herself always had enormous empathy for gender issues in her personal life, especially that of her female students, whom she nurtured, mentored, and handheld during their personal battles with patriarchal pressures. The Women's Center, one of the earliest autonomous women's organizations in Bombay, supporting women who were victims of violence, is where Savoor spent many years. Vibhuti Patel has noted that Savoor's presence and involvement had a humanizing effect on the young firebrand feminists. Let me now sum it up. This is a very poor representation of the rich information on each one of these 8 women, which I have got. But anyway, weaving together these snippets from the life and work of this earliest group of women sociologists in India, how may we order their differences? Is it possible or necessary to imbue them with collective cogency? Is there a nascent legacy, or are they only a set of individuals who happen to be contemporaries? They do show many differences in approach, methodology, and underlying ideological inclinations regarding gender concerns and towards the idea of professionalism and academic commitment, as we saw. Yet I would argue that they were more than just 2 consecutive cohorts. For one, there was among them some interaction, sharing, and mentoring. Iravati Karve was an inspirational figure for Dubey, Acharya, Parvatama, and Desai. She was also directly interacting with Hate at SNDT. Desai and Dubey bonded during the Towards Equality report and continued that friendship till the end of their lives. Desai and Savoor were both highly influenced by A.R. Desai's politics and personality. All of them knew each other, and there was an inevitable referentiality, even if not always direct referencing. We can get this through their spoken and written words. More importantly, despite their varied academic responses to the subject of women and gender, if one listens carefully beneath the surface of formal communication, the sotto voce of gender concerns is audible. And here I am saying just what Ratna Naidu has said in her article, or in the article on her. It is possible to read into the silences that those who had a high stake in recognition, in gaining recognition as professional sociologists, or were committed to other ideologies, they stayed away from the subject in their academic life. There was a general perception in the early stages that this subject lacked rigor. On the other hand, being from the pre-1970s era, both Karve and Hate had an unself-conscious relationship to gender. Hate's Kutumba Sakhi was a direct enactment of social reform goals through women's perspective, linking knowledge and action. Karve's articulations of gender were not geared to political correctness, but embodied original thinking. Patricia Oberoi has hailed her as a pioneer of an indigenous feminist perspective on the Indian family. If one looks not merely at academic articulation, but at voluntary and activist work and in personal life, not just through the spoken and written word, but in action, all 8 had underlying gender concerns. It was a community, loosely knit, of shared concerns, voiced and unvoiced. The firm compartmentalization between the pre-1970s and post-1970s phases in feminist scholarship is not wholly tenable. From the point of view of today, Chandrakala Hate's contribution is as important as those who came after the 1970s. Even though all excepting Karve lived on for a while in the third phase, that is the post-1990s, and were sympathetic to the new approaches that were deconstructing the unitary category of woman and emphasizing on difference, the socialization of this our group into feminism had been based on sisterhood and solidarity of women. It was a strong mutual bond among them. This distinguishes them from the later generation of the 1990s and later of women sociologists. In this early generation, all 8 were highly regarded as sociologists. There was no tokenism in the responses to them. The whole thing about tokenism started happening later when women's studies, gender-sensitive policies became established, and the women's movement insistently highlighted the invisibility of women in the public sphere. That was then when tokenism became, reared up. For the later generations of women sociologists, including mine, these 8 pioneers were indeed inspirational symbols for their competence, professionalism, erudition, and passion. Whether there was incipient feminism is a harder question to address and would depend on one's interpretation of feminism. But as our editors Gita and Joseph have pithily put it, whether or not our subjects explicitly identify with feminism, their work can be analyzed from feminist perspectives. Finally, so I have not answered my own question on whether they were incipient feminists. I would leave it to you to decide. Finally, intellectual histories are as much constructions as chronicles. Terms like founding fathers, lineage, legacy, generation, they carry complicated loads. We could perhaps see the group of 8 early women sociologists as embodying multiple legacies of an incipient feminism. This is my own inclination. But more realistically and with less grandeur, we could certainly claim that both continuity and rupture among themselves and vis-a-vis later generations are inflected with a sense of collectivity, community, and a commitment to action. This can be gleaned in the shared awareness and concern that comes through from the biographies and the stories of the 8 women, rather than from their political affiliations and theoretical approaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kamala Ganesh, for really brilliant lecture and analytically rigorous lecture. You have provided us an in-depth understanding about the 8 sociologists who made a pioneering contribution, and also made the path easier for the next generation of feminist sociologists to gain legitimacy in the mainstream sociology. I think a major takeaway from your presentation is emphasis on plural streams of knowledge construction, which feminist sociology has always propounded. Then the against status quoist and social stability school, how the countercurrents emerged in sociology, and one of them was a feminist sociology, and how these women, 8 women, which you have analyzed and studied theoretically, methodologically, and analytically, contributed to bring the credibility and legitimacy in sociology. And your acknowledgement, you're the first sociologist, I think, who has officially acknowledged contribution of autonomous women's movement in bringing change, because most of the time autonomous women's movements remains illegitimate child of the overall social movement. And but only my little difference with you is that autonomous women's movement is not apolitical. Okay, they refuse to be controlled by the political bosses or political party. They all, in fact, they are the conscience keeper of all social movements. In any protest, you would see first the autonomous feminists would be at the forefront, whether it is a housing rights or rights of the tribal or displacement and relocation, or the right to shelter or right to food or right to education. Autonomous feminists have been the conscience keeper of the social movements. With this, I would now request Professor Arvinder Ansari to give her feedback on the lecture by Dr. Kamala Ganesh. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vibhuti ji. And I take this opportunity to thank IMPRI for giving me this opportunity to be here, part of this discussion, which is very important and significant. And of course, the discussion and the paper Professor Kamala Ganesh has presented on these pioneering sociologists, or whom we can also call the pioneering sociologist in Indian feminism, their contribution, the way they have learned, and they have brought significant change. There is this intersectionality of sociology and feminism when we look at their work, though they did not acclaim themselves as feminists, but they had legacies, I would say. They had a legacies which set the tone for feminism in Indian sociology of feminism, which is very important. And I'm really impressed, their own lived experiences, and the way the feminism was weaved in their lives, particularly when Kamala Ganesh was talking about, and she's written also about Iravati Karve, I would like, who was the senior most and who has been the in a position of mentoring, that she was such a complex personality that she would drive a scooter. She was the only woman who would drive a scooter, and yet she would also say that I place my head on your feet and ask for your blessings to her husband. So this complexity is so much woven in reality. And that is something which is very important and instrumental, because what is happening post late 90s feminism, where we want to detach with everything, though, yes, being a feminist, or the way this journey has been of sociology of feminism, if we look at that, always the feminism has been looked as less rigorous, stigmatized domain of knowledge, but it is very significant. And we, what has happened is that genuinity, whether it is Ratna Naidu or Iravati Karve, Neera Desai, the way they talked about their lived experience, and that the way they weaved, the way they practiced sociology was very, very important. And these the kind of epistemologies which they have created through their writings are very important. And somehow, what has happened, it is very, very important and significant work, I would say. A lot of things to learn, that even if they, in this article, Kamala Ganesh also talks about their personalities, where Desai and Dubey had a very, very polite tone of communicating, and whereas Ratna, Naidu, and the Iravati Karve, who were, yeah.
No, I didn't mention Ratna Naidu.
No, you haven't mentioned about
Yeah.
Ratna Naidu, but I was just talking
Okay,
about when I read, I'm in the second chapter where,
Okay.
Kushal Dev is talking about it.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Kushal Dev.
Yeah, it was, and that is such significant that we all, that realization of being a feminist is very important, and every women sociologist is a feminist is a very powerful statement. But I was looking at it, with a sense of the kind of deviation which has cropped up. In academia we have a discussion, and there is, because again, how to negotiate the rigor in the discipline has also become an important question. So there I was saying that, if you talk to colleagues who, though women are not from, do not specialize in sociology of feminism or women's studies or gender studies, they also kind of have that patriarchal voices. So, that becomes a very, very important countering point of, so what in fact is very important is also the whole what you mentioned in your talk, that collectivity of their writings are something which are very important, though they are touching on different aspects of women's studies, but they are weaving through the lives of women, and they are their own personal lives. Like, for instance, Parvati Amma, who comes from a background where, her struggle belonging to a Dalit woman is very much significant and woven in her profession. Again, I would like to quote from this book only, where, I think she has spoken to one of her students who comes to meet her, and she talks about her bathroom, and she says that I have never seen such well managed bathroom, and she says that, why are you forgetting my profession? Or commenting on N. Jayaram when he talks about loyalty to Guru. So, this outspokenness which you have taken up, these 8 feminist scholars, which, through your article, which I could understand, and it was really very interesting and pleasurable reading for me, that we are somehow, I would also like to say that we are somehow also got deviated from that route also. The kind of tone they had set in, is missing, because if we see their writings, they even Parvati Amma, when she talks about caste and she talks about reservation, so they are very, very much engaged with the social phenomena which are emerging. Their insights are very significant, and this is something which one feels is very important. Another point which I would like to highlight is from the Kamala Ganesh's talk, is that this the engagement of these scholars with gender needs has been very well, kind of examined through academic articulation, and their voluntary engagement. This life of feminist and social activist is very much woven, and it is very much there. And we see that, whether we called it Kutum Sakhi, which was a very important social enterprise set up by one of these feminists, was very important in itself, that they talked about, how they could make changes in their life through their academic work, through their activism, through their practice is a very important concern. And in all these 8 feminists which Kamala Ganesh has talked about, there is has very Kamala Ganesh has highlighted the problematized that there is an underlying gender concern which is very much there, and how it has been weaved into community is also very important. She also emphasized through the life through the biographies of these scholars, that how a life of women is woven in the community, in the patriarchy, and how she balances all these 8 biographies are perfect example of showing that how they balance their personal and professional lives, though they belong to different ideologies. Neera Desai had a different political ideology. Parvati Amma had a different ideology, so would belong to a different kind of political ideology, but somewhere they all connected when they were looking at women as a category and the challenges which are there in women's life. So that was a very, very important question here. And how the feminist movement, somewhere it is also highlighted that how feminist movement has addressed these concerns. And still, what happens is that when we talk about feminist epistemology, these 8 women are also highlighting that the women's stand positionality is also very important. The location and how they navigated and how they brought a useful changes in the lives of women is also very important. So in fact, Neera Desai has talked about all these reform movements as very important, and women's movement as a catalyst of social change, where they have also talked about the need to reform the social system, their participation in public sphere, how important it is, and the way they do it. From their life histories, we see that there is an inclination. There is no kind of one would say hesitation to participate in social activism. They have all participated, their concern, their sensitivity, and very importantly, I would like to say that they provide us lens to look at social reality from a very, very different prism and different perspective, which is very important. And the way the struggles, how they have used the struggles in their lives to to champion the adverse situations, and how they have kind of brought in a new domain of knowledge in sociology, which was, I would feel the sociology of gender is very, very much part of sociology, which with the significant contribution of these women has been, kind of acknowledged and recognized. So this is a very important contribution in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Arvinder Ansari, for highlighting the importance of legacy and also the lived experience and the importance of praxis, which the feminist sociology always considers very, very important component for knowledge construction. And also the epistemologies that is created by the writings by the pioneers, or what can say first, these 8 women sociologists, and how they brought rigor in the discipline and also the respectability, and how they made the ways for your generation much easier to negotiate with the mainstream sociology. Now, I would like to request Dr. R. Indira for making her intervention on, and she is also the contributor of a chapter number 3, Sociology of C. Parvatamma, Going Beyond Stereotypes. And we have some very fond memories of being with Professor Parvatamma, lambasting us in 1987 at the Indian Social Science Congress, where she was the chairperson of the sessions on feminist sociology, on women and development. Yeah, over to Professor Indra Ramarao.
Good evening to everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Well, I would like to thank all my seniors, colleagues, and friends who are here. And also to Dr. Gita and Dr. Joseph for giving me an opportunity to write about my teacher. Well, I really, do not know what to say and then what I should leave, because I understand I have about 5 minutes. One thing I'll just bring out a few points of my association with Dr. Parvatama, and what not just me, but a whole generation of her students learned from her. The first thing is that I was her student between 1970 and 72. And then in 72, after I completed my master's, I joined the department, and she gave me the opportunity to join the department. And she was known for taking a stand. I was just about not even 20 then. I hadn't. So I believe people would always ask her, in Kannada, they would say, why did you bring that young girl here? What are you doing? But she said, I'm confident. And also, I must remember with gratitude that she and my father, who was a professor of English in the university, they came from neighboring villages in Davangere district of Karnataka. And so they were colleagues also in the university. And she had that enormous respect for him. And, the first time I saw her as a young girl was when she was doing her PhD in Manchester. And her thesis was, she worked under Professor Max Gluckman, and it was all ready. But she would come to my house, and with papers and a file. And then I was wondering why, because I had no courage, of course, to go and talk to them, or I was just in school. Then I came to know she would come to my house to have her thesis reviewed by my father from the language perspective. And I remember my father, later telling me, she writes such good English. Honestly, there is no need for me to say anything or comment, but she always wanted to discuss. And even later, I would like to quickly add that though she had would always take a stand and was not comfortable with some people and wouldn't honestly saying, didn't want us, to go and talk whatever that be. But she always sent us, to discuss. She said, you should go and meet this person. Don't get, stuck in this Mysore. And quickly, I would say, I honestly, I was associated with her in the department for nearly 2 decades. Later on, of course, I would meet her occasionally. But there are 3 lessons which she taught us, because though I haven't come across her speak of gender, feminism, women's movement, etc. many times in class, like many of my students and her students know. But there are 3 things she taught us, which I think are very important for developing a feminist approach to life and feminist understanding. You know what that was? The first was, she did not want us to say 3 things, never encouraged us. One, she said, we were not supposed to say, I don't know. The second thing was, she didn't want us to say, I can't do. And the third and the most important thing I think is very important for when you bring about questions of gender equity, identity, courage, boldness, all of which have been taught to us by the autonomous women's movements, she would get very angry if we said, I'm scared.
I'm also a recipient of her anger.
Okay. So these 3 things. At 5:30, she would call me and say, from tomorrow, you teach this course. I was so young, but so scared. So if at all I said, I can't, just stop it. Don't say I can't do, I don't know. I don't know how you do it. Go. That's all. Search. These were days of no Xerox machines, no Google, nothing. Go and talk talk to somebody, this is something she encouraged us and which I learned from her. And I think this is a, tradition that I would call it a tradition because it is a healthy one that I continue with my students. Go and discuss, go and search, don't give excuses. And the other thing which I found, which in her writings, of course, Professor Kamala Ganesh has spoken about it, Arvinder ji has also spoken about it, Vibhuti has spoken about it, and that is that she did not write. I mean, there were, of course, very few references to issues of gender, etc. But otherwise, her writings stood out for their courage. And what is important for me, as somebody who has been associated with the women's movement, is that it's very important to take a stand. And Dr. Parvatama always took a stand. Whether it was not comfortable for others or for herself, she did not mind. And often she was criticized because she, did not like polarization. That is a great quality of hers. And I think both for sociology and for gender studies, this is very important because she totally discouraged that. Even in the appointments, I would like to go on record and say this, in the appointments that she made, she always saw to it that diversity was maintained, respected. She did not encourage polarization. In fact, it was from her that I learned that word for the first time more than 30 years ago. So I would just like to say, close by saying whether it was polarization, whether it was caste, whether it was, village conflicts, as Professor Kamala Ganesh said, or elitism among the vulnerable groups. And whether it was, the voluntary sector, some people in the voluntary sector growing up as institutions themselves, though they entered, this movement to help people, she was critical. And there were times when people were shocked by the kind of stand that she took, but she was very vocal. And I also remember that it was she who, in our department, set this tradition of research projects, where she encouraged a number of her students. And of course, people who worked in her projects were also from other disciplines, not just limited to sociology. And she was a great field worker. And she would keep a tab on those of her students who went for field work. Nobody could take it easy. So all I would like to say is, in her writings, in her classes, she allowed dissent. That's another thing, because I look at the whole gamut of work that's been done in gender studies, at least a lot of it, as a protest, as a question, and as dissent. And in her own life, both as a person and as a teacher and as a writer and a scholar, Dr. Parvatama always allowed dissent, both in her life, and she tolerated it even when others tend to do it. So I would only say, she was uncompromising. And of course, sometimes, people would, in Kannada, there is a word called gatti, which means strong. This is a strong lady. And there were times when in the university, I know the authorities of the university used to say, we can go and talk to anybody, but not to Dr. Parvatama. If she takes a stand, if she decides something, well, that is it, final. So it's also quite, I do not know what would have happened, because by the time the time she left our university, left in the sense, she superannuated from the university, and the time the women's movement, autonomous women's movement in Mysore and Karnataka emerged as a strong force, were almost the same. But however, I don't remember her coming into our programs, because I came into women's studies from the academic women's movement, and so I know about this. I've not seen her come or participate, etc. But I could see that when she was committed to a cause, she always supported it. So I would like to end by saying, she started 2 institutions, one called the Center for Research in Rural and Tribal Development, and the other a trust which she created in her mother's name called the Shagli Shivudrama Trust. And I'm also just happy to share with you that for a long time, these two institutions had virtually gone defunct, but now her students, all of us, we've tried our best to revive these two institutions, and we are trying to do our best to take her legacy forward by organizing events and setting up the library that she had again. But we are always inspired whenever we want to organize a program, when we discuss, when we do something, we always say, what would she have said? So, and so her thoughts, that she shared with us are always still there. And thank you very much for this opportunity. Back to you, Vibhuti.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Indira Ramarao. Whatever may be the reservation of Professor Parvathamma about the women's movement of the first stage dominated by upper class women, but she also supported, like when she was supporting you, you were already, your feminist organization was established in 1980. Samata, which was running from your house. So that kind of a support she always had. Maybe she was ahead of her time because now she has become an icon for the young Dalit feminists, because after I put up the poster, when they saw Parvathamma's photograph, I got so many positive responses from the young Dalit feminists. So I think she became iconic for the rising Dalit feminism, no? Because she raised the question of Dalit question in the mainstream sociology. So now I would like to ask Professor Ratna Naidu, guest of honor, to make her presentation. Thank you. After that, yeah.
Can they hear me?
Yeah.
Namaskar, everybody. I'm very privileged to participate in this meeting of feminist scholars. Not having worked on gender issues in any depth, I feel though that I'm here as an amateur amongst experts and deep scholars in the field. I've had this kind of experience on previous occasions, and it may be worth telling my previous two experiences. When I came back to India after studies abroad in the late 60s, when many of the speakers before me were still students, I think, my mentor was the formidable Professor Eminent Sociologist for some months. He asked me once, why aren't you working on feminist issues? I replied that I had too much on my plate already. And then some years later, he moved to the National Institute of Advanced Studies in Bangalore. I received a letter from somebody in the administration in that institution who asked me to speak on women's issues. So I wrote back saying, I've not done any research on these issues, but I can speak on other topics with some authority, and I listed the topics. Then this person wrote back, this is an invitation from Professor Srinivas. So I had no option, and of course accepted and prepared for a lecture with the title Women and Caste in India. Professor Srinivas, I delivered the lecture in the presence of Professor Srinivas, and my second time I was invited to talk on this issue was for not talk, but write a paper on work and women for the Yojana paperlet, which used to come out from Planning Commission. So these were my only two forays into the topic of gender and feminism. But I'm ever indebted to Professor Srinivas for his thoughtful push that I should open my eyes to this new paradigm for understanding of the societal process. And I've always been, of course, grateful to Professor Srinivas for giving me on the a space in academia when I came back from studies abroad. But when I see the enormous amount of work in this area as reflected in this book, Reimagining Sociology in India, Feminist Perspectives, as a scholar, I still very much feel I'm an amateur. My focus, as in the late 1960s for most academics, the focus was on modernization and development. But I found that the chatter on this topic in the West was too much influenced by Max Weber and not compatible with my lived experience in India. And so it took me a while, for several years, in fact, to untangle that chatter. And so my early focus, that was my early focus of my work. Later, I was curious about the communal problem, on which I find Professor Ansari is also has written a book, which I have to find now and read. But I came to the conclusion that after my studies on the communal problem, that the dyad or the hyphenated conceptualization of the sacred and the secular could be deleted from the dictionaries without any meaning to the words sacred and secular. It is always hyphenated, but the sacred does not only emerge from religion, but also from the political economy, which was my major conclusion. And implicit, of course, in this analysis is, of course, the gender question, because the feminist outlook is very much in the grooves of the questioning the sacred, which gives a certain position to women in their lives. I moved into the urban problem during the years when I moved to Hyderabad to be with my family, and worked on projects, and major one being a multidisciplinary project for Hyderabad Urban Development Authority. Here, intellectually, I was enriched by the spatial aspects of the societal process. So sociologists always have to be open to many disciplines in order to understand social change. Thank you, Professor Ganesh, for your talk on the first generation of feminists in India. I see many cheering signs for women now compared to my young days, when people even questioned, especially in America, I found very few women in postgraduate studies and for research. And once I had asked my guide, professor, why is that so few women in graduate school? And he was answered, they all get married and we lose our precious time we give to them. So this is a very different kind of era and a different kind of age, and I see lots of women in academic lists and in administrative position, while Women still do not have the networking and backroom advantages with which men can climb the ladder more quickly. In this postmodern digital era, women have wonderful opportunities if they know how to surf the system. So I'm optimistic and about the path forward. But of course, there are always seeds of age-old exploitative formulas such as subcontracting, outsourcing, etc. Women are more vulnerable than men to these processes. There is more to do, and gatherings like this, we share insight and celebrate stories that are important steps in that process. Thank you for your kind invitation to participate, even though, as I said, I'm an amateur in this field, and I see only the positive sides because the past was much more grim. Thank you again.
We can't hear you, Professor Patel. You are muted.
I say thank you, Professor Ratna Naidu. In the chat box, Dr. Gita Chadha has responded that the question we have to collectively ask is, do women in sociology have to necessarily work on gender alone? And also, don't make sociologists have to address gender and patriarchy. And also, we must articulate feminist perspective to urbanity, to religion, and to state. And that's what I think your major path-breaking contribution has been. So we are really honored with your presence. And now I request your student, Dr. Arpana Rayapro, to make her comments. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Patel. Thank you, Gita and Joseph, for bringing us to this forum. And of course, wonderful to see Kamala and listen to you again after all those years when they had the seminar in your honor before the book happened, and I was glad to be a part of it. I'm even more glad to be following in my professor's footsteps on this, literally speaking after Professor Ratna Naidu. Professor Ratna Naidu has been, I did my MPhil with her, but more than that, she's been a mentor. She's been an institution builder. And I think, of course, she's a feminist scholar. There's no doubt about that. As her last line in Kushal's essay says, but I really want to emphasize that our generation has benefited from the sacrifices and the toils of her generation, and we are quite complacent about it. I know we take a lot of things for granted, and these things we take for granted because, as I said in my review of Reimagining Sociology in India in the Sociological Bulletin, I think there has been a real connection of sociology and feminism. Of course, political scientists may say that it's between their discipline and feminism too, but I am being biased and I don't mind, but I think sociology as a discipline has benefited enormously from feminist methodology, the lens, the way we do our research, the views from below. And I think that is what allows for a very dynamic field. The discipline is constantly changing. So whether it's communalism, whether it's urban studies, I think today we cannot separate feminism. I just did a review of a wonderful book on Bangalore slums. And I think the author, Kaveri Haritas, brings in gender, class, and caste and the intersectional perspective without really needing to neglect any of them. And I think we need to be proud of this kind of work that we are doing. So once again, I really appreciate your asking me to say a few words here. I know that there are many speakers and you might have more people to say things. But again, I'm extremely happy to be a part of this. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Professor Patel, you're
Yeah, we
muted
also
again.
have, because there is so much noise outside. We also have Professor Indra Munshi. Would she like to speak? She can unmute. IMPRI team, please unmute her and she can speak. Yeah.
I don't
Yes.
think she's there.
Okay.
She
Then,
sent me a message that she is tired and she has
I understand.
gone out of the,
Yeah. Okay. So now, can we have a last round where Professor Kamala Ganesh and the discussant, whatever they want to say about the future of feminist sociology and the. Sorry.
yeah. Yeah. So can I speak?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
you could
Thank
start
you.
and then, yeah.
Thank you so much for all the comments on the book and on my article, but also on the generally on the field of feminist sociology. So there were some things I couldn't say because there was a limited time to speak. So I really had to condense at at the risk of sounding very banal. Sometimes I had to make huge inferences, talk hugely inferential with giving very little data. But the most important thing that I found here is that there is an archive waiting to be discovered by us among this generation, even among the next generation like Ratna Naidu and Suma Chitnis and so many others who were born in the 30s. And that this is an exercise which is well worth doing because we need a rich factual basis for what we theorize. Of course, I'm not saying facts. Of course, facts are facts. But much more rigorous and more extensive archiving, if those are still around with us, well and good, but then talking to friends, talking to colleagues, and looking at their papers, this is a whole enterprise in itself, and I think it is quite important to do it. I realized when I was writing about these 8 women sociologists that I had only touched the tip of the iceberg, and that if I had more time and more opportunities to go deeper, I might have come up with some slightly different kinds of insights. I'm sure. I'm not saying that what I said was the last word. So I think this has to be an ongoing process. Then taking up Gita's question that do women sociologists necessarily have to write about gender alone, or even about gender, I would say, do they have to write about women necessarily? They could be they could take feminist perspectives on other subjects as well, or they may not explicitly take feminist perspectives, but sure, why shouldn't sociologists do other kinds of work? Because one thing that some of us have discussed, not looking only at this generation, but the little later generations also, when writing about women became a little more popular, in the 70s and 80s, so everybody would write an article on women's. It was not such a problematic thing as it was earlier, that it hasn't got rigor, etc. I think that got wiped away pretty soon because feminist scholarship became as rigorous as so many other. I mean, it did get a reputation for academic rigor as well. So a lot of women sociologists were writing also about women. They would write about say urban studies or caste or class, and then also one article on women. And I think that was a good thing, because in a very natural way, because of their engagement with other topics, in a very natural way, without using the word intersectionality, they were being intersectional when they talked about women in a slum or the position of women in some particular region. They were immediately talking about difference and anchoring it in difference. So I think that kind of work, which we now are a little bit, I think, harsh about, also needs to be archived for what kind of perspectives it tells us. Already, I think a certain kind of intersectionality is available in those kinds of, so there are many readings possible. And I also want to underline the importance, since I identify myself as a social anthropologist, the importance of anthropology, social anthropology to women's studies, because the notion of difference, the notion of cultural specificity, the notion of patriarchy as not a monolithic thing, but that it is inflected with so many other things. This is, I think, quite a bit of anthropological perspectives were taken at that time by those who were in feminist scholars, when it had not yet become genderizing the disciplines was still ongoing. So there was a time when there was feminist scholarship. And there, I think the role of social anthropology and sociology has been pretty important as women's studies and a feminist perspective has been for sociology. The other way around has also happened. And I think it is nice to, and your volume, I think, does give importance to this mutuality, which I think should be emphasized, not to claim any singular legacy for any idea, but to see the multiplicity of sources from which it has come. I think that's an important point to note in your book, and that we ought to remember. So this is really what I want to say.
I think there are many sociologists and activist researchers also as participants. I can name Dr. Manisha Rao, Dr. Nasreen Fazalboy, Dr. Linda Lane from Gothenburg University, Sweden, Dr. Lina Pujari, Dr. Manushi Mitra. And there is an activist researcher who has also done a PhD in sociology, Dr. Nandita Gandhi. If anyone of them and all of them, if they want to give their feedback and they can unmute themselves and speak. You are invited to speak. Hello. Dr. Manisha Rao, Dr. Nandita Gandhi, Dr. Nasreen Fazalboy, Dr. Linda Lane, Dr. Lina Pujari, Dr. Manushi Mitra. Who would start? Hello. IMPRI team, please. Please unmute them. Dr. Linda Lane, can you unmute yourself? Dr. Lina Pujari? Okay. First, Dr. Linda Lane. Yeah, please start.
First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for a very enlightening.
Can we see you?
Okay, I thought I was visible. Let's see, we can try again.
Please start your video. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Linda. Please go ahead. Hello. Oh, we have lost you.
No, ma'am.
You are there. Yeah, Linda.
Okay, I'm going to start my video.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon from Sweden, and thank you very much for a very enlightening seminar. It's been marvelous for me to listen to all of you. As a novice in the ways and activities of Indian sociology, it is really a privilege to have listened to the lecture given by Dr. Kamala Ganesh. It's also been an enlightenment for me to participate in the previous seminar, which gave me more to think about, and which is why I'm here today, because it gave an opportunity for an outsider like myself to visualize the possibilities of sociology. So thank you very much to everyone for this opportunity. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Yeah, we are honored with your presence. With all the time difference, you have managed to be there right from the very beginning. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I would not have missed it for the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Lina Pujari, please go ahead. You have already unmuted yourself. Can we see you?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you've just put your video on. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to do that because I'm traveling. I'm on my way home.
Okay.
No, but I just wanted to say it's an absolute pleasure.
We have lost you.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello. Dr. Lina, we have lost you. Are you there? I think gone.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Now we can. Yeah. Now we can.
Yeah. Okay. I think I had logged out for a few seconds. So I said it's an absolute honor and a privilege Also, because I have my teacher, Professor Ratna Naidu, has also taught me when I was a student at SU. That was almost like many, many years ago. And it was such a pleasure listening to her after almost 26 years. And I'm also extremely happy because we are discussing a book to which I have been a contributor, and this interface between sociology and feminism is something that's very close to my heart. And I'm so glad. So thank you to IMPRI, Dr. Patel, and especially Gita Chadha, Dr. Gita Chadha, and Dr. Joseph for enabling this discussion. It was such an enriching discussion. We every time, even though we have been a part of this exercise, every time you listen to this, there is always something new to learn and to reflect upon and to engage with. So thank you so much. I wish we have more and more of these kind of discussions. Thank you once again.
Lina Pujari. Thank you, Dr. Lina Pujari. Now I request Dr. Manisha Rao to go ahead. Please unmute yourself. Yeah. Dr. Manisha. IMPRI team, have you? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. I didn't really want to come in now because I've spoken the last time as well, but it has been so wonderful, this volume coming out in honor of Professor Kamala Ganesh on her retirement. And it brought together a lot of very interesting and, interesting aspects in the study of, in sociology of genders, feminisms, as Gita titled her the conference at that time. And we, all of us, we had lots of discussions and debates around it while the planning was going on. Of course, she was the one who really sort of, was the force behind it. And the product is such a wonderful product. And I think after that, all of us have tried to, follow, trying to have a level of scholarship and conferences at the department so that we can also bring out something that is publishable. So thank you for that. I think the other thing I would like to just sort of mention is that we are standing on the shoulders of giants who have done immense amount of work. And I think we are really humbled listening to Professor Kamala Ganesh's talk about the contributions of feminists, of sociologists who've done such an immense amount of work, and listening to Professor Naidu and of course meeting her. And I think it's an immense amount of work that they've done and balanced various, things, administrative life, scholarship, activism, all of that. And I think somewhere we are really, we have lots to learn, because at the moment or at least it's very difficult to know how to, get around these things. But thank you so much. And I think we'll take a leaf from your lives, and hopefully we'll be able to go forward. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Manisha Rao. Nandita Gandhi has written, Dr. Nandita Gandhi has written that, hey, everyone, I don't have the mute and video buttons on my screen for some reason. I am delighted to be here and hear you all. Certainly miss the days when more activists wrote much more than now. And yeah, okay. So why doesn't she have her buttons, video and mute? IMPRI team, can you facilitate so that we can hear Nandita Gandhi, who has done extensive research?
Yeah. I would also like to just thank Professor R. Indira for giving us this insight into Dr. Parvatama's life and her work. And I think we have so much to learn from that. Thank you, Professor Indira, for that insight. Thank you.
Okay, so now, thank you, Dr. Manisha Rao. Now, Dr. Nandita Gandhi, Dr. Manushi Mitra, and Dr. Nasreen Fazal Boy. Would you like to give your comments? Nandita, please unmute yourself. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Her research has been in the areas of labor processes, labor relations, structural adjustment, gender implication of macroeconomic policies on women's work, and extensive work. Her book, stake on women's
Issues
movement,
at stake.
has been a
Issues at
textbook
stake.
in most of the women's studies departments. Over to Dr. Nandita Gandhi.
Thank you very much.
And I've been urging Nandita for a very long time now to come up with a new edition.
Yeah.
I know she's really being, I think I'm going to take up her offer now.
Yeah.
And her support, I hope. You know what, I was thinking that really we are standing on the shoulders of lots of people, women who have done a lot of work. And I think the rigor that has come in, has been because there were pure sociologists involved in it, and also activist writers and researchers, if you want, involved. And the two coming together has produced really more work, and work from different angles. And I think that IAWS is sort of confluence of both the streams that came together. And somewhere we've lost that little bit of that vigor. And I would love that all of us get together and revive that whole part, because there are now newer activists that have come in the movement, and a whole new generation. And they also need to write and document what is happening. And so I think that would be really good, but I'm really happy to be here and listen to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandita, for your very inspiring and I think very concrete suggestion that what we need to do at the Indian Association for Women's Studies, bringing activists and researchers and academicians and teachers and trainers on the same page. Thank you very much. And that's a need of an hour. And now we have Dr. Nasreen Fazalboy and Dr. Manushi Mitra. Are you there? Manushi Mitra, Dr. Manushi Mitra.
Yes, I'm here, Dr. Vibhuti. Yes. Okay. I just wanted to say that, I'm not an academic. I'm a historian trained in history, but I've learned so much over the years, and I've been a practitioner working with the World Bank and Asian Development Bank, taking all these approaches into the field and looking at what aspects we could somehow address to look at issues like the intersectionality and all of that, to see, because women are subjected to different forms of institutional pressures, and whether it is in the field of energy or it's in the field of drinking water, sanitation, employment, whatever it is, everywhere there's a double struggle. So the whole, the whole concepts which Mariamis, for instance, talked about, and then Vinadi, etc. These are also, giants on whose shoulders we rest our work. So I'm really grateful, Vibhuti, for your having circulated the notice of this seminar, and please do include me whenever these are being held. And I would also like to rebuild my association with Indian Association of Women's Studies, because I used to be there earlier, but then all these years I've not been in the country, which is why I've been kind of dissociated, but I would really like to join. So please, thank you so much, everybody, especially Dr. Kamala Ganesh. It was really wonderful.
Yeah,
absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Now, the last one, Dr. Nasreen Fazalboy, colleague of Dr. Kamala Ganesh and one of the veteran sociologists of Bombay School of Sociology. Over to Dr. Nasreen Fazalboy.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Nasreen.
Yes, well, I don't have too much to say other than hearty congratulations to all the participants, and of course to Kamala, who has given such a clear account of the developments in each of these very major sociologists, and what kind of dilemmas they went through, what kind of dilemmas really the discipline has gone through when faced with feminist ideas and novel ideas at that time. So I can only congratulate all of you on and look forward to reading your book. I've got a sort of renewed interest in it. I've been out of touch a lot with developments in anthropology and sociology, and this has certainly revived my interest, and thank you very much. That's
Thank you,
basically
Nasreen. Yeah, thank you for your feedback. And now I would like to sum up today's discussion. First of all, I'll begin with thanking Professor Ratna Naidu, editors of book Reimagining Sociology in India, Feminist Perspective, by Dr. Gita Chadha and Dr. Joseph MT, who also were discussants today, along with Professor Arvinder Ansari, for such a vibrant discourse and esteemed participants who made the deliberations far more interesting and interactive. Today's deliberations enlightened us about the life and works of pioneer feminist sociologists in India, and also the women sociologists who made a pioneering contribution, except for Parvatamma, who put forward the feminist and those who put forward the feminist standpoint through, say, from the location of class and caste privilege. Much like today, women sociologists and anthropologists of the early generation too arrived at quote-unquote women's question either through their personal life experiences of patriarchy in and outside the discipline, or through engagement with social movements. They rarely arrive at it through, say, disciplinary necessity of the sociology or anthropology. This is often the case with most of the sites of feminist epistemologies. I think who are the feminist epistemologies always ask different questions. And that's what we saw, that in most of the social sciences, not only sociology alone, but either explicitly or implicitly would discourage critical and theoretical engagements with these questions and accepted patriarchy as given. They reproduce patriarchal explanations, solution, and patriarchal solutions to this concern. And what happened, like what we saw in Professor Kamala Ganesh's presentation, which has convincingly revealed that most of the women sociologists adopted the dominant disciplinary discourses, but when their unease with the discipline grew, they often took these questions, quote unquote, outside of sociology, either into the social activism, she said, even in the beginning and also at the time of summing up. And as in case of Chandrakala Hate, by right, it happened like she established an institution. Dr. Iravati Karve, she wrote Yugan, and political commentary on Dalit question, which was voiced by Dr. Parvatamma. Parvatamma made several valuable contributions to the study of the status of scheduled tribes and scheduled caste, and anti-caste movement, Veera Shaivism, and the critique the Brahminical scholarship. And I think that also extended to her critique of women's studies and also the autonomous women's movement. Professor Neera Desai, Professor Leela Dubey consolidated feminist sociology through professional bodies such as Indian Association for Women's Studies, RC 32, Research Committee 32 in International Sociological Association, and also by associating with the vibrant women's rights movement in India during 80s and 90s. They also channelized their academic energy into the formation of women's studies centers and innumerable policy-making bodies and also task force on women. So I think now our gender, and rightly, I think it is re-emphasized by several, most of the speakers and also the discussants, and the feedback we got from the sociologists and social activists, that we are standing on their shoulder. And I think we have to continue, whether you believe in legacy or not, but I think we have to continue what the torchbearers of the first generation of sociologists did. So we have to continue the same legacy. Now with this, I request IMPRI team to
Can I make a very small point?
Yeah, both of you can make this small.
Just one very small point. I just of course want to thank
and
you.
even Dr. Arvinder Ansari, if you feel the necessity, all three.
No, I don't want to delay things. I just want to make a very
no need. We have
which is that, you know, because there are members from various universities, board of studies in the audience, I think it's very important for us to also talk about how these work of the early women sociologists, whether on gender or on other in other substantive fields, we need to teach them. We need to bring them in the classrooms. We need to bring them in the syllabi. We need to bring them in the pedagogical space if we want to visualize them more. So I think a part of the feminist project of developing our sociologies is to work with pedagogy, is to work with board of studies, is to work with syllabi, to bring in the works of these women sociologists in wherever we can, wherever they are relevant. So that is really something that I wanted to say, because the question of the participation and representation of women in sociology requires us to bring them within the pedagogic domain. That's really all that I want
very important.
also
Very, very important. Yes, Dr. Joseph.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Gita. In fact, I was also thinking that it has to be weaved in syllabus, because what is happening wherever you talk about having, bringing women in curriculum, then there is a question that you have women and society paper in your courses, and why do you need a separate, or why do you need to weave women in all subjects? But like, for instance, Manisha Rao or people were talking about environment. So that's also very important that we, the paper on environment, sociology of environment should have component of ecofeminists who have, contributed. And another thing I was also talking about, that this is a wonderful work which, both Joseph and Gita have compiled and edited and brought forth. There is also something which is very close to my heart, and I was also thinking about indigenous feminists. There are a lot, we also need to do that. There are feminists who indigenous feminists who have written in their own vernacular, their own languages, but they are invisible. And as students of women's studies or sociology of gender, I think we also owe our responsibility to do and encourage researchers and bring forth that work. And there is significant literature where there is in different strands of indigenous feminism which is there.
Right. Very important, extremely important. Yes, Dr. Joseph.
Maybe just one or two observations, like the agenda of the book, when we tie it up with today's interactions, was to look at feminism as a liberatory epistemological stand, and which in a way seeks to blur the kind of mainstream and margin kind of divisions in academic pursuits, where margins become mainstream and the boundary between mainstream and margins in academics gets blurred. That has been a larger agenda of the book, which I just wanted to reiterate as a byword. Thank you.
Yeah, such a prophetic statement, Dr. Joseph. Yeah, I think you have given a quotable quote. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now anyone else? Dr. Indra, would you like to say something? Yeah.
Thank you. I say thanks a lot. And I only wish that these discussions, as our friends have already said, must continue on,
very, very refreshing. Yes, Dr.
Sociologists from different parts of the country who have been writing in different languages. Thank you.
Can I make a last point?
Yes, yes.
I didn't make it because there was no time in my presentation. When somebody talked about regional, there were among these 8, some were rather better known than others. Some of them I, for example, came to know only through this exercise. Those who wrote predominantly or considerably in their regional languages and were rooted in the regional milieu, as compared to, let us say, Neera Desai or Leela Dubey, who were more, had a more cosmopolitan milieu, they achieved less visibility. And this shows that, this shows certain biases in the way we evaluate scholars and how well known somebody becomes. So this point I did want to make. There's a difference in this, in the group of 8, this was one of the differences. Some of them spent much more time in their regional languages and they were very well known in their own regions, but they didn't achieve that
national
degree of national and international recognition that their work surely deserved. So this was one. The second small point is that all the 8 women, they were either single, never married, 2 of them, I think, and the rest all had spouses who were in academics, who were professors of chemistry or sociology, and all of whom from their narratives encouraged them. Spousal support was quite crucial at that stage. So women who were married and did not have this kind of spousal support, there must have been some women sociologists like that who did good work, but who were not able to project themselves into the national arena. So, I mean, I didn't make these points because there are so many points to be made, but I think it is worth noting that in that era, spousal support, especially from academic husbands, I think mattered. They gave them a push. In the case of Hemlata Acharya, Neera Desai, all of them came into their own, no doubt.
Dr. Leela Dubey also.
Leela Dubey, they all came into their own, but the initial push in that era, I think it made us, it helped, which probably is not so much the case now, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have written in your chapter about the location also, that Leela Dubey being in Delhi and Neeraben being in Bombay. That was much this thing that gave them
the only person who got over this, who was both very regionally rooted and achieved international visibility, was Iravati Karve. She did both, she did both, but otherwise it was divided in this way.
But she was also registrar of SNDT for 5 years, where she was located in Bombay. Yeah.
Yes, and then her location was in Pune mostly.
Yes.
Yeah. And she wrote quite a lot in Marathi. So she did have a very strong regional rootedness.
That way, Neeraben was also equally, the number of publications of Neeraben in Gujarati are, I think, even more than that in English. No?
Yes,
so
yes.
She was also bilingual from the very beginning. Even a PhD thesis is available in Gujarati. Women in Modern India is there.
Okay. Same would apply to Parvatama. She wrote a lot.
What about Parvatama? Did she write in Kannada?
Yeah, but not as much as she wrote in English. She did,
Interesting.
only one or two, not.
Yes. Okay. So thank you. We have really very, very enlightening and extremely rich discussion today. And once again, we thank IMPRI team for providing this platform. Over to Dr. Simi Mehta.
So to give the formal vote of thanks.
Dr. Arjun Kumar.
Zubia, over to you.
As we come to the end of this extremely enlightening discussion, I, Zubia Moin, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, would like to formally propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. We'd like to express our gratitude to the speaker for today's session, Professor Kamala Ganesh, for taking out a precious time to share her views on the crucial topic, Tokens, Symbols, or Incipient Feminists, the first generation of women sociologists in India. And to our guest of honor, Professor Ratna Naidu, for sharing her very valuable views. We thank our esteemed discussants, Gita Chadha, Dr. Joseph M.T., Professor Arvinder Ansari, Professor Indra Ramarao, Dr. Aparna Raya Prod, Professor Nandita Gandhi, Professor Linda Lane, Dr. Leena Pujari, Dr. Manisha Rao, Dr. Manoshi Mitra, Dr. Nasreen Fazalboy, for adding your diverse perspectives and valuable insights to the deliberation. We are grateful to Professor Vibhuti Patel for chairing and leading the talk. And of course, we thank all our participants here on Zoom or on Facebook Live for participating and raising pertinent questions. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts. I hope that you continue to tune in future to our Gender Gap series and IMPRI #WebPolicyTalks. Thank you once again, and I wish you all a very good evening.